Hey, babe. Anyone want to chat about the newest couple on the block? That's right, I'm talking about Sam Florek and Persephone Fraser in one of BookTok's favorite and most cherished summer romances, Every Summer After by Carley Fortune. So welcome to Barry's Bay, where, yes, technically, we're talking about a hot summer romance. However, on this episode of Femme Furious, we are diving into jealousy, female friendships, friendship bracelets, women editing themselves, and of course, we'll be diving into the longing, the missed opportunities, the first kisses, all of that juicy stuff that has you wanting to scream into your pillow at 2 o'clock in the morning. So get ready to jump off the dock with me, dive into the lake, swim across it like a badass right after this. All right, welcome back to Femme Furious. I am your host, Julia Rose Portella. A little housekeeping before we go and explore Barry's Bay. First and foremost, on Tuesday, we will be diving into the second half of this book. It's incredibly bingeable. You can finish it in 24 hours. It's a beach read. It's great. We love it. And that will lead us right into next Friday, where we will start deep diving into the TV series, which is releasing on Amazon Prime. I don't know how the episodes look. If they are short, 30-minute episodes, we'll probably do 1 through 4. If they're longer, like I anticipate they'll be, like the off-campus series, we'll go 2 episodes at a time. So just stay tuned because I don't know how many episodes we'll do altogether next Friday, but we'll be doing at least 1 and 2, maybe potentially up to 4. If you want to stay in the know, up to date, and join our incredible community, please go and subscribe to the Patreon. There are multiple different tiers, but this is our hub and our centralization point. So please go and subscribe, even just to the free section, so you can always be up to date about what we're doing. Last but not least, on June 17th, I am hosting a free virtual book club. This is called Common Threads Book Club. So if you are here, you're listening, and you're a bookish babe, I just want to let you know, Common Threads is a low-stake, low-effort book club. Every month, there will be a different theme, and all you have to do is read a book in that theme. It could be any genre. It could be any length. This month, we are doing Pride. Hi, hello to all my gaydies, theydies, and ladies who are here. You could read any book. You could read a book by a queer author. You could read a children's book that talks about gender and sexuality. The point isn't to all of us read the same book and then deep dive it. The point is for you to just read and show up and be in community. And I will have everybody submit the books that they've read. We'll kind of go around the virtual room. You'll talk about the book that you read and why you think people should read it or why they should not. I will create a master list. Everyone gets that emailed to them after the book club. And then we will be moving forward into July, where we'll be picking a new theme. If you want to vote on the themes that we do, guess what? Go over to Patreon. You'll be able to do that over there. Okay, let's take a chic peek at today's episode. We are diving into chapters 1 through 10 of Every Summer After by Carley Fortune. This is a contemporary romance. It's a beach read. It's really fun. It is definitely also heart-wrenching. Let's do a little judging the cover. We have Sam and Percy jumping off the dock into the lake, but it's also got that like neon orange font kind of going on. I don't know if it's necessarily neon, but it's got that sort of orange font going on. And to me, this is like the color scheme of their friendship bracelet that they talk about in this first half of the book. Tropes and microtropes. We've got friends to lovers, second chance romance, one bed in this stretch of chapters. So we're dealing with some really fun stuff. All right, let's have a quickie where we will breeze through the key feminist themes and moments in the first half of this book. I loved this book. I loved it right away. And the more I sit with it, the more convinced I am that romance isn't actually the most interesting thing that happens throughout this book. Though I will say, personally speaking, I am a sucker for both a second chance romance and a friends to lovers. So this is hitting all of my sweet spots as a fangirl. This is automatically a book that goes in like a top 10 for me because I love these types of themes. I love how they get explored throughout stories, particularly when they're done well, which I think this book does both of those things incredibly well. There are a lot of really rich feminist themes in this story, though, because at its core, it is really a story about Percy, who is a girl who learns very young that parts of herself are difficult for other people to accept. And therefore, it becomes this story that is really highlighted and emphasized in the first half of this book about a girl who is editing herself to be liked. And who amongst us listening to this podcast cannot relate to that? Persephone is constantly navigating her fear of rejection, her fear of loneliness, and her desperate desire to be fully seen by another person. And honestly, I think that that's why so many readers, myself included, become completely obsessed with Barry's Bay and these characters. It's not just the ambience of the story, which is so present. The world building is so good. The connection to youth and nostalgia is so prominent. But beneath all of that is this romantic tension of this sort of existential question that we all have at some point or another. And it's so painfully familiar, especially for women. And that is, if people knew who I really was, would they still love me? And that's what this story is exploring. And that's why I think it's not only super bingeable, but so great as a contemporary romance. When we first meet Persephone, she's 13 years old. She's awkward, she's self-conscious, and she's already carrying an incredible amount of insecurity. Of course, this is age appropriate for somebody who is in that awkward preteen stage of life, but it's like emphasized again and again how unsure of herself she is, both as a young adult and as an adult. So as we go back and forth between these different storylines, it's not like she's outgrown this. If anything, it only gets amplified as she gets older. But at 13, her family gets a lake house down at Barry's Bay, and she isn't exactly arriving to the beach house with like main character confidence. She's just gone through an incredibly hard year, a socially difficult year. And in fact, one of the first things that we learn about her is that she doesn't even want to be called Persephone when she's younger. She just wants to be called Percy because, according to her, Persephone is too much of a name. If there is a sentence that like perfectly captures who Percy is as a character, that's it. That's the one. Throughout the entire novel, Percy seems deeply concerned with the idea of being quote unquote too much. She spends so much of the story on page and in between lines. You can tell, like, we're reading in the margins about this woman who is trying to become less in order to be more likable. What makes that especially interesting to me as a reader is that she's named after a goddess. So Persephone is a figure that is associated with transformation, duality, power, rebirth. Yet Percy spends years trying to shrink herself into something easier for other people to digest. There's something almost like ironic about that contrast, which I think is intentional, especially when she's younger. And I think the relationship to the journey of Persephone that we get when she's older is one that we will be visiting a few times as we move through this story. Now, in the story of Percy, the early years, we have her relationship to Delilah, who is a foundational part of this need for her to feel like she needs to edit herself. Even when they end up mending their relationship later on, Delilah is the one who is responsible for the most significant turning point socially in Percy's life, at least from this negative context. We haven't gotten to Sam and Charlie yet. When people sort of discuss female friendships in books, there's often this tendency to sort girls into like these neat categories: good friends, bad friends, mean girls, supportive girls, girls. But Delilah is a lot more flushed out than that, and she seems a lot more realistic. She's complicated. So is Percy. And I love that we get these two female characters who have an incredible amount of depth, who are multifaceted. As they should be, as many women and people in general are. Like, we can't just be boiled down to a narrative point. These are characters who are flawed and who have to navigate moving through their flaws in order to complete their arcs. So Delilah is this character who is capable of both incredible cruelty, to be honest, and also incredible loyalty when her and Percy end up mending their relationship. And because of that, her friendship with Percy feels so authentic and true to this concept of girlhood that many of us have walked and navigated in our own lives. So when Percy is 13, Delilah completely humiliates her, essentially, after this horror movie incident. So the thing is that Percy wasn't doing anything wrong. She was sharing something that is foundational to her as a person, that she loves horror movies and that this is her thing. She likes to write horror stories and she loves to watch these horror movies. And we learn that this gets, connected to Sam. And then by the time she's an adult, she's dating Sebastian. Sam asks her about their breakup and she says, he wasn't the one for me. And he's like, oh, he wasn't a horror movie fan. And she's like, actually, I don't know. I never shared with him that I love them. So for all I know, maybe he was. And Sam is like baffled by this. And Persephone even says, yeah, to Sam, this is something that's like biographical in the story of Percy. So the fact that she shares this with her group of friends when she's 13, which, by the way, is like the last time I watched a horror movie myself. That's not true. I watched The Housemaid with my sister not too long ago, and she just asked me to watch Obsession, which I really do want to see. But I'm not a particular fan of horror. So Percy has everybody over, all of her friends, to watch The Evil Dead. And it seems like everyone's having a pretty good time until Delilah gets so scared that she pees her pants. And because Delilah is humiliated, she redirects that humiliation onto Percy. So instead of it being embarrassing that she has peed her pants, she makes it embarrassing that Percy would even like something like this. And because adolescent girls are navigating complicated social hierarchies, the rest of the girls follow in Delilah's lead. And the fallout is brutal for Percy. These girls cut up their friendship bracelets and leave them in her desk for her to find. Percy is exiled. She's ignored. And she finds herself isolated from a group that she once belonged to. And it's such a painful moment for her where she learns that her authentic self-expression and desires and interests can cost her connection. And so she begins to edit herself at this point. Percy isn't somebody who necessarily craves popularity. This isn't like her MO, this isn't her goal. But she does crave connection and belonging. It matters to her. And so after what happens with Delilah, she begins focusing on how she can become more likable. I think a lot of us listening to the show or reading this book can point to a moment in our own lives where we've learned a similar lesson. Maybe it isn't a profound love for horror movies per se, but certainly every woman listening has encountered the feeling of being too loud, too ambitious, too emotional, too opinionated, too intelligent, too strange, too passionate. Whatever it may be, so many of us learned early on that there could be huge social consequences for being authentic. And instead of becoming more embodied in our beautiful essences, all of us listening, we then become self-editors, just like Percy. So the plight of Percy is to make herself more palatable. That's why her relationship with Sam is so enticing. It's not simply because he's got, MMC hot boy privilege, although he does. Sure, Sam is attractive. He's got the big blue eyes and the dark swoopy hair, but attractive people are everywhere, okay? The reason that Percy falls in love with Sam is because he seems to appreciate the very parts of herself that she is working tirelessly to suppress and to hide. He likes her intensity. He likes her enthusiasm. He likes her weird interests. He likes the way that her minds work and her freckles and her hair. Most importantly, he just likes her. And when somebody makes you feel fully known instead of merely tolerated, it's incredibly difficult to forget them, especially when you've spent years worrying that the real you might be fundamentally unlovable. Even as an adult, we see this pattern repeating itself. So, for example, when Sebastian's friend says something deeply misogynistic and inappropriate, Percy loses her shit and calls him out, and she's right to do this. She would love this podcast. That man is staring down a waitress's shirt and asking Percy whether she will quit working or scale back once she decides to have children. He's the worst guy you've ever met at a bar, and we've all met somebody like this. And yet afterward, Percy apologizes to Sebastian because he had never seen her act out like that before. So again, it's not that she's done anything wrong, because in fact, I think here she's doing the right thing, and Sebastian should be the one calling out this behavior as well. But Persephone has spent so many years squirreling away pieces of herself that her adult life is actually so separate from anything that could even resemble intimacy. So let's dive into the love story. Technically, they say that this is a friends to lovers, though I would love to put out the argument that they were never really just friends, okay? From the time they are 13, I don't think that they are ever just friends. When Percy meets Sam at 13, there is already something that is drawing them towards one another. Now I'm going to pause and say it's Charlie who notices Persephone first. But I digress. I'm just saying from the very first time that Sam and Percy hang out, there is something about their relationship and their energy that just clicks. So maybe at 13, neither of them have the language to describe it yet, and maybe they're too young to even fully understand what they're feeling, if they even understand it at all. But there is something undeniable about their connection from the very beginning. Percy notices Sam, and Sam notices Percy, and they are able to forge this intimate connection almost immediately. What makes their relationship so special isn't just that there's attraction that eventually develops between these friends, but rather that it's an attraction that grows alongside of their friendship. The more they get to know each other, the more attracted they become to each other. And so many romances focus on chemistry, but chemistry alone isn't enough to sustain a relationship. They have all the good stuff. They have shared history, and they have built a trust that is critical to their relationship. And it's important that we talk about trust early, because this is something that has clearly been betrayed and that we are marching towards the consequences of as we go through this book. So over the years, Sam and Percy build a true sense of knowing each other. They become witnesses to each other's lives. And that kind of intimacy is far more powerful and valuable here than the romance itself. That is why the friendship bracelets matter so much throughout the novel. Because on the surface, it seems like they are just a sweet childhood tradition and a symbol of friendship, and something that Sam does to solidify his solidarity with Percy after she admits to being bullied. But if I'm being honest, those bracelets function like a promise ring long before they even kiss. Those friendship bracelets represent their inner commitment to each other, and the idea that even when Sam and Percy are separated by distance, which they are for a majority of the year, that they remain connected to each other. So every time that Percy looks at her bracelet, she is reminded that somewhere out there is a person who knows her history, who understands her references, who remembers her story and loves her writing, and continues to choose to be her best friend year after year. And I think there is something so deeply romantic about that kind of consistency in a story like this. Of course, Percy isn't the only one that benefits from this relationship. It's very easy when we're in Percy's POV to focus on why Percy loves Sam. But for everything that Sam provides Percy, she reciprocates it to him in kind. Sam is carrying his own kind of loneliness throughout much of his adolescence. His father has died. Charlie is his older, charismatic, larger-than-life brother. And his mom, Sue, is balancing being a single mom and running a business. And as a result, you can just tell that Sam learns to stay out of the way. When we meet him, Charlie is literally coaxing him to say hello. He has to shove him to be say hi, buddy, And Charlie insinuates that Sam's social life is non-existent. And this is because Sam does not want people's pity over the fact that his father has died. And so he goes into this bit of self-isolating and learns how to be self-sufficient and how to carry his grief quietly and on his own. When Percy then enters his life, she creates a space where he doesn't have to do that anymore. She doesn't treat him like a boy whose father died. She doesn't pity him. She doesn't compare him to Charlie. She simply sees him for who he is. And I think this is incredibly important because perhaps for the first time, Sam has somebody who allows him to be vulnerable without making him feel weak. He can talk about his father, he can talk about his fears, he can talk about his grief without worrying how he will be perceived. And that makes the foundation for their relationship built on this concept of safety and acceptance that is mutually beneficial to both of them. So let's talk about their first kiss. It's long anticipated after he rejects her during Truth or Dare, in which Charlie steals the first kiss. The kiss that Sam and Percy share is very sweet and tender and maybe even a little erotic. The heartbreaking part is what happens afterwards. After years of longing and years of tension and years of crushing on Sam, Sam finally allows himself to act on his feelings for Percy, and then almost immediately he takes it back. The next day, he tells Percy he doesn't think that they should be together. When I first read this scene, I was so devastated for her. Just like that gut sinking, visceral reaction to the rejection she is experiencing and feeling it almost firsthand myself. From Percy's perspective, this is the worst possible outcome. She's finally received confirmation that she wasn't just imagining things. Sam wants her too. The feelings are real. The chemistry is real and their connection is real, but he decides not to pursue it. Now, one of my strongest opinions about Sam is that he is a deeply well-intentioned person who is absolutely terrible at communicating. His reasoning isn't completely irrational, like not even at all. He points out that they're young. He points out that they'll spend most of the year apart, that he's never been a boyfriend before, that he doesn't know how to do it, and that both of them have enormous ambitions. Percy wants to become a writer and Sam wants to become a doctor. They are both standing at the beginning of their lives, looking forward towards the futures that they have worked so hard to dream up for themselves. They haven't even gotten to the point where they can build those futures yet. So what I think Sam recognizes is that what exists between them is not casual. This isn't just a summer fling. This isn't a passing crush. This isn't something that is light or uncomplicated. It is serious. It is potentially life-changing. And I think that realization scares him. I think Sam understands, perhaps better than Percy does at this moment in time, just how deep their connection actually is. And he knows that if they begin something romantic, they will not be able to approach it casually. They would be risking something enormous, which is all of these other things that are around them that they want to reach for. So in Sam's mind, I think he's trying to protect them both because he sees Percy's potential as a writer and he sees his dream of becoming a doctor. And he worries that a relationship this intense could distract them from these bigger goals that they have. Now, I don't necessarily think that his fears are rooted in reality, but I do think that he is sincere about what he is trying to say here. He wants both of them to become the people that they are capable of becoming. And the tragedy is that in trying to protect and preserve the integrity of their relationship, he ends up pressing directly on every insecurity that Percy has been carrying since she was 13. Percy takes this as a personal rejection. She hears confirmation of every fear that she has been spending so much time trying to suppress. And she feels like this person that she knows the best isn't choosing her. Like, at what point do you feel then that you are enough? That you have this person who multiple times has come close to having this moment of kissing you, who tells you, sometimes I feel like nobody knows me like you do. Do you ever feel that way? Pulling on these heartstrings, knowing that Sam is a smart boy. He's going to be a doctor. He knows that Percy has feelings for him. He knows he has feelings for her, but he's been letting her swim in this like shallow end of the pool in her feelings for him. And then he kisses her and they have this moment and then he rejects her. And it's not obviously that Sam is like personally trying to reject her. We know that that's not true, but that's how it feels to Persephone, that this person that truly intimately knows her still isn't choosing her. All right, while we're on the topic of complicated emotions, I also think that we need to have a conversation about jealousy because this book has a lot of it woven throughout its pages. If there is one thing that the novel completely dismantles, it's the idea that somehow women are uniquely jealous creatures because this is a cultural narrative that exists out in the world that women are naturally catty and competitive and are threatened by one another. Not only is that stereotype completely sexist, but it's fucking boring. Most importantly, this book gives us evidence that jealousy is far more complicated than that. So let's start with Percy. Percy in the present is jealous of Taylor, but not in a way that romance novels often portray jealousy. She isn't trying to sabotage Taylor. What Persephone is jealous of is what Taylor represents. That Taylor has been a person in which Sam has spent 2 years of his life building a deep, intimate relationship with her. Taylor has access to the version of Sam that Percy has lost. She's living inside of a future that Percy had once maybe imagined for herself. And that is a very different kind of jealousy because it's not rooted in competition, but really in mourning and in grief. Like, this is something that brings her grief out to the surface twice as hard as just the loss of Sue Florek. And then we have Sam, who honestly I think is the far more jealous character here. So Charlie kisses Percy. Sam is there to witness it and doesn't feel good about it. Charlie touches Percy's knee earlier in the book. Sam notices it. Charlie pays attention to Percy at any context, in any way, and Sam is the one who notices. So if Charlie merely just exists anywhere near Percy, somehow Sam is giving off vibes that's not okay in one context or another. Then Percy goes on to date Mason. Sam is dismissive of their relationship. He brings up Percy's writing to Mason and highlights the things about Percy that Mason does not know. And then he ends up storming off when they finally meet in person. So I found myself laughing because pop culture has somehow convinced us that women are the jealous sex, while men are over here literally mentally cataloging every interaction involving a woman that they love. Sam is no different. What makes Charlie a fascinating character in this little trifecta that we've got going on of Floreks and Frasers is that in relation to Sam and Percy, you don't really know what Charlie's intentions are. I think it's obvious that he loves Percy, but the question is, what kind of love are we looking at? What does that actually mean? Is it romantic? Maybe. Is it affectionate? Absolutely. Is he intentionally provoking Sam? Honestly, I think that there is a reasonable argument for that as well, but we don't actually know what his intentions are when it comes to Percy at all. We do know, however, that Charlie notices Percy in a way that other people don't, even in a way that Sam doesn't. He recognizes when she's unhappy, he encourages her, he sees strengths in her that she often overlooks in herself, and that, again, Sam doesn't necessarily pick up on. He sees a very different side of Percy. And because of that, every interaction between Charlie and Percy becomes loaded with tension too. Jealousy in the book acts as a source of information. Like, now we understand, based off of what they're jealous of, what these characters value. And while we're on the topic of the Florek household, let's chit-chat about Mama Sue, because it's easy to focus on Sam and Percy when they are the emotional center of the novel, but Sue is a bad bitch. I just know that she's hot and we would be best friends. I love her so much. Every single time that she appears on page, she brings a grounded, nurturing energy that immediately makes you understand why Percy gravitates towards her. What I love about Sue is that she embodies a version of femininity that feels both strong and deeply compassionate. So often in fiction, these ambitious women are written as cold, while nurturing women are written as passive. But Sue is both ambitious and nurturing at the same time. She owns and runs a business. She's hardworking. She's very clearly capable. And she's also carrying a tremendous amount of responsibility on her shoulders by being a single mother and doing it all on her own. She never loses her warmth or her ability to make people feel cared for, despite all of that. Perhaps most importantly, I think, is that Sue respects Percy, point blank. There are so many times in young adult novels and in romance novels where adults or authority figures dismiss teenage girls as dramatic or immature or frivolous, but Sue never does that. She treats Percy like a person whose thoughts and whose feelings matter. She listens to her and she makes space for her. And she guides her. She's there to act as someone to give her advice. One of my favorite examples is when Charlie is like jokingly making comments about how much Percy can eat, and Sue immediately shuts it down. It is a relatively small moment, but it tells us so much about her character. She does not allow casual shame to flourish, even when it's coming from her own son, even when her son is just joking. She isn't interested in preserving his comfort or his ego at the expense of a young woman's confidence, and that's why Sue is my girl. I love her. She also tells Percy not to take any shit from boys, including her own sons. And I love that moment because it demonstrates that Sue's inner feminista isn't just theoretical. She expects her boys to treat women well, and she expects Percy to advocate for herself, and she refuses to make excuses for behavior that falls outside of these standards. When I think about Sue, I keep coming back to the fact that she raises two incredibly tender boys. Sam and Charlie are two very different kids, but both of them are emotionally intelligent, they're hardworking, they're thoughtful, they pay attention to details, and neither of them embodies the type of hyper-masculine, emotional repression gag that we so often see celebrated in male characters. Now, are they perfect? Absolutely not. Sam is a terrible communicator, and Charlie is a walking question mark with like some potential for STDs. But they care deeply about the people that are around them and their community and their circle. They're helpful, they're kind. And I think that is a direct reflection of Sue as a mother who raises these two boys who are allowed to feel things and who are allowed to be soft and who are expected to be kind and considerate to the people around them. In many ways, I think that Sue represents a subset of feminism that often gets overlooked. She isn't just like delivering speeches or standing on a soapbox, but instead she is simply building a life that reflects her values, and she's raising children who reflect them too. So it's no wonder that Percy loves her. In fact, I think that Percy loves Sue for many of the same reasons that she loves Sam. Sue makes Percy feel like she belongs. And as an only child, Percy clearly has a loving relationship with her parents. They are supportive and they encourage her dreams, but there are moments because they are older where they feel slightly removed from her reality. Their concerns can come across as sometimes overprotective, and their advice occasionally feels like out of step with where she is and what she's actually experiencing. Sue, on the other hand, is young and understands Percy in a way that feels instinctive, and I think that Percy responds really well to that. Sue isn't just her best friend's mother. She is a second mother to Percy. So the last thing I want to touch on, which I kind of touched on it already, but I want to go a little bit deeper, is the name Persephone. So let's take a stroll into the underworld, shall we? The original Persephone myth is simplified into a story about abduction because men. But the modern interpretations focus a lot more on transformation. So Persephone begins as a young girl and eventually becomes the queen of the underworld. She is a figure that is associated with duality, existing between two worlds. She belongs to spring and she belongs to winter. She belongs to life. She belongs to death. She belongs to innocence. She belongs to the loss of innocence and experience. And Percy is somebody who is also living between two worlds. She spends the school year in Toronto and then she has her summers in Barry's Bay. These summers are where she experiences friendship, love, family, possibility, growth. They are her version of spring. And those things, by the way, are also connected to her youth, right? There's something nostalgic about her summers at Barry's Bay. She hasn't been there in 12 years. So her adult life, the city, the isolation, the guilt that she is carrying, the loneliness, the endless string of relationships that never seem to last more than a few months. In many ways, Persephone's adulthood is the underworld. She's emotionally trapped. She's living in a self-proclaimed exile from the people that she loves the most, and she is carrying a guilt that she cannot and almost refuses to confront. And that's where I think that Persephone, as a parallel from the myth to like the character, becomes really fascinating and something that I think we want to like keep our fingers on through the book and through the show, because the original myth is ultimately about return. Persephone coming out of the underworld and bringing spring back with her. It's about transformation and emerging from darkness as somebody who has been changed from the inside out. And that is exactly what Percy is being asked to do. She cannot move forward until she returns to the thing that she has spent years avoiding. She has to revisit her past. She has to confront her mistakes. She has to tell the truth, whatever that is. She has to descend into her own underworld before she can emerge from it and actually heal her relationship with Sam. So that is our little quickie for today. Okay, a little feminist follow through. One of the most devastating pieces of this story to me in the first half of this book is when we find out that Percy has not pursued writing, but is instead an editor. Now, I think that there is something metaphoric and symbolic about the fact that she goes from being this fully embodied creative person to somebody who has to edit things. There's no coincidence in that. But what I wanted to do for our feminist follow through today is to promote a space that I personally use and is hosted by my mentor, Danielle. And that is a newsletter called Grants for Creators. So if you have ever rooted for a character like Percy from Every Summer After, or if you are a character like Percy who is talented and ambitious and dreams big despite the obstacles, you'll want to join this newsletter. This resource helps artists, writers, and creatives discover funding opportunities that can support their work and their growth. Its approach is also deeply intersectional. So there are featured grants for specific creative mediums, if you have a specific medium that you are looking to fund, as well as opportunities designed for BIPOC creators, Indigenous artists, women and queer opportunities, and many other underrepresented groups. So whether you're working on a manuscript or building an artistic practice or pursuing a long-held creative goal, it's such a valuable tool for finding support and turning your passion into possibility. So I'm including a link in the show notes to join the newsletter. You can join for free, but there's also a subscription. I pay for the subscription. It's great. And it's communal based. So when you subscribe to that, you will get the opportunity to gift 1 month free to 5 other creatives that you know. And so in this way, we're able to pull in so many more creatives to get funded for the things that they actually care about. Okay, let's crack open our burn book where we will look at the superlatives for this episode. The Bold and Bothered Award. This award is strictly for the femme and the furious. It's the quote or the moment that relays the most feminine rage. And it is Persephone who is acknowledging Taylor for the first time. She goes, I look at Taylor, who's not doing a very good job at hiding her annoyance. Then again, if I found my hot doctor boyfriend drunk with a strange, clumsy woman who I thought was his cousin, I would be annoyed too. And if that boyfriend were Sam, annoyance wouldn't cover it. I would be murderous. The Shiro Award. This award goes to the baddie who is the most inspiring or the moment that is the most empowering. And it goes to Percy swimming across the lake. I love this moment so much. The Femme Fatale Award. You know, for the most smash the patriarchy moment of the episode. It is Sue Florek, the one and only, saying, don't take any crap from any boy, not even my own sons, okay? Speak your truth trophy. Best quote or line. Bangs are like the New Year's Eve of hair. I love this for you, Percy. Honorary heartthrob because I'm just a girl, okay? And I want to talk about the most swoon-worthy moments. Of course, we have to talk about You Came Home. 3 words that are essentially I love you packaged into something that is so deeply nostalgic and pulls at your heartstrings from the minute that Sam says it. But also in chapter 9, he says, you are still the most beautiful woman I've ever known. And for that, I love it for Persephone. I love it for Sam. Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of Femme Furious. If you like this episode, share it out with your friends. Make sure you join the Grants for Creators newsletter. I will be back on Tuesday. We are covering the second half of this book. And until then, go put on a cute bikini and jump into the lake.